You probably remembered this from Eckert Island, the fact that Vegapunk built what seems to be a nuclear reactor that's generating crazy amounts of energy for the government. There are these ancient weapons in One Piece capable of mass destruction, there have been widespread effects on the One Piece world that have completely changed its environment, and radioactive mutations could even potentially be responsible for the various races like the fishmen and the minks. And in its ancient past, we know that the One Piece world has already ended at least twice before. First, plunged into fire and darkness, and then a world-ending flood. And you don't have to be a scientist to figure out that these stories of global destruction made by too advanced technology and people with bad intentions, have a basis in the real world. So putting all of this together, I believe that Eiichiro Oda clearly could be building a nuclear allegory with One Piece, adding his voice to a legacy of Japanese authors and mangaka who speak on the subject of nuclear power and nuclear weapons. Both the progress and benefits it can provide to society and, bringing about crazy advanced technology, but also the untold pain and destruction that it can cause. And even though in a way this is gonna be a classic Ohara analysis theorizing style video, as you can tell, it's obviously a very heavy topic and something that is just such a fundamental part of Japanese culture, so it's gonna be a little bit more serious, but I wanna look at this in different steps in a couple of episodes. I wanna start with what we know from One Piece and show you why it's there. Then I wanna talk a little bit about the background and why it's such a big topic, obviously, in Japanese literature and Japanese pop culture, and then predict or speculate based on that at the end to kind of figure out what it might mean for the Void Century and for what's gonna happen at the end of the story. Chapter 1. The Atomic Mother Flame and the Fallout of the First and Second Worlds. Alright, so to really dig into how Oda is working nuclear energy and nuclear weapons into One Piece potentially, let's start by talking about the obvious pink flame in the room, the Mother Flame. This invention is Dr. Vegapunk's crowning achievement, his own words, as well as his greatest regret. As he explains, it's this source of boundless energy, fulfilling his own dream to build an unlimited power source that can be shared with the entire world. He kind of imagines it as an artificial sun burning forever and providing all the energy needed for everyone on the entire planet for free. However, this energy also presents immense danger. As we learn, after York stole just a portion of it, the world government, and especially Imu, was able to power a weapon of mass destruction, destroying the entire country and kingdom of Lulusia in a single celestial blast. You know the panel. It seems pretty clear that the Mother Flame and the engine sustaining it are based on a nuclear reactor. Look at it, right? In fact, Vegapunk's power plant in Japanese is quite literally translated to fusion reactor. And some fans have even speculated that the mysterious writing A and Mu on the reactor could be a wordplay based on how atom is pronounced in Japanese, atomu, because to means and, so you get it, atomu. But I don't really think that this is necessarily the first time that the One Piece world has seen nuclear technology. In fact, it seems very obvious that this technology probably has destroyed the world at least once, but potentially twice before. Because like pretty much all of Vegapunk's technology, as he admits himself, he's basing pretty much a lot of it on his discoveries on recovered objects and literature from the Void Century. Mostly stuff that he read about from the books from the Library of Ohara and their research. As for the Mother Flame, this too then could of course be based on an ancient discovery and Vegapunk's attempt at recreating it. In fact, this is kind of just seen as fact, even though we don't really know it, but it seems very likely that it's connected to the Forbidden Sun that's referenced in the Harley text, right? A passage in the First World section of the Harley text that reads, "Within the earth there was fire, mankind succumbed to the greed and touched the Forbidden Sun." And in the mural, we then also see people seemingly going down, mining and harvesting this strange glowing power from deep within the planets. A little bit like uranium or plutonium. Now, this Forbidden Sun could have been the ancient equivalent of the Mother Flame that Vegapunk is now attempting to revive and recreate. Mankind touching the Forbidden Sun then seems to kind of suggest that this power was somehow abused in that period. It does of course feel very similar to myths like the Greek one of Icarus flying too close to the sun and facing dire consequences, or the tale of Prometheus stealing fire from the gods and giving it to humanity and then being punished for giving them so much power. However, the history of One Piece is shaping up to be just as technological as it is mythological. In fact, a lot of the stuff that we thought was magic or weird turns out to be ancient lost technology. So this power that may have provided the entire world at some point with energy didn't last forever. Now, if you watch the channel on a regular basis, you will know that I've got a few theories in the past on what the Forbidden Sun might actually be. It might be geothermal energy, it might be an actual nuclear fusion reactor, it could even be something like an ancient Lunarian's backflame, but whatever it really is, we can make a very decent guess based on the Harley as to what happened with it. Mankind succumbed to greed, used the Forbidden Sun for itself, and the result was catastrophic, taking this thing that was meant for good and was probably too powerful for people, abusing it and ruining and destroying the entire planet. So after this struggle involving the Sun God, the Earth God, and the Hellflame Serpent, the world is consumed by fire, death, and darkness. The civilization of the first world, whatever that was, ends, and I think it's pretty fair to speculate that this happened because the Forbidden Sun was either destroyed or just overused or misused, not just a result of some gods battling, right? Again, a lot of mythology in One Piece turns out to be tech. So this source of nuclear energy could have exploded, or the humans of the first world may have harnessed the destructive powers of nuclear weapons, causing widespread destruction in a giant war. In a nutshell, nuclear annihilation, right? Now, when the Second World ended, we know it resulted in a transformed world covered completely in water, and in the Harley Text Second World section, it even says, man killed the sun, became God, and the sea got stormed. Basically, there was a global flood that fundamentally changed the layout of the entire planet, which according to Vegapunk, was also man-made. And considering the most recent sea level rise in the story, we might actually have gotten a glimpse of how this happened. After Imu destroyed Lulusia, the world felt a massive earthquake followed by a meter rise in the sea level. There's now a massive hole in the ocean where Lulusia once was, but we've seen a hole just like it before, of course, at Enies Lobby, possibly one of the world's oldest wounds from the First or Second Worlds. Near Enies Lobby, the surrounding islands face a devastating tidal wave called Aqua Laguna, causing Water 7 to continually keep sinking little by little into the ocean every year, and it seems very possible that this adverse weather event is directly caused by the use of the same weapon used to destroy Lulusia, and that the region where Lulusia was located could now face some very similar effects. Also, there's the entire weird "it's always bright" thing that's going on within his lobby. Might or might not be related to that as well. Now currently, Imu seems to want to get his hands on the Mother Flame. Well, he already kind of has, but York hasn't really made it work fully yet. The Forbidden Sun of this generation, of the Third World basically, because he wants to finish the job of flooding the world or just shaping it in his image, right? Now this could be relating to this great cleansing that was mentioned by the Gorosei way back, but was this always the reason for the flooding, really? Like, if the original Forbidden Sun was in the core of the planet, could covering the world in water actually have been originally intended as a sort of cooling mechanism of some kind, or to stop a meltdown? Was flooding the world meant to remove this sort of power from the Great Kingdom hands initially, and then something else happened? Like, was that how Imu was able to gain the upper hand in the war? By removing this infinite power source that they probably depended on for just about everything. Again, think about all the crazy tech that Vegapunk had on Egghead, and he said they didn't even come close to anything what they actually had in the Great Kingdom and in the past, so all that crazy tech that they had in an entire kingdom needed to be powered by something. Now, the strangest part is probably that when we line up the Harley text with the Third World, the world of the current story, Luffy's story, here a line reads that the sun returns and brings a new morning. Now, this could suggest that ultimately, the result of the Mother Flame or the Forbidden Sun could still be a positive one. That despite the destruction that it caused in the past, there is still potential for hope in the future if the right people use it the right way, potentially. Maybe after the world government is defeated and a new model is implemented, Vegapunk's dream of this everlasting energy for everyone will actually come true. Something that's, by the way, taken from the ideas of Tesla, who had the Wardenclyffe Tower, who wanted to basically create free wireless energy for the entire planet too. There's a bunch of different people obviously mashed into Vegapunk's character. Einstein, Oppenheimer, etc. It's possible that the sun returning them in the third world isn't referring at all to the sun god Nika in the form of Luffy, but instead to the technology of the Forbidden Sun. This time though, it might not be forbidden anymore. Instead of being held away from humanity's grasp, it's now freely shared with everyone. Though how exactly you would achieve this time, no one abusing it, I'm not sure. After all, the way that Vegapunk sees it, this infinite source of power could still mean an end to the world's conflicts, but it could also mean an end to the world itself. If every country had limitless energy, there would be no more need to go to war over natural resources because everyone's needs would already be met all the time. The One Piece world could finally live in peace. In fact, there is a non-zero chance, I think, that the One Piece itself could just be this crazy source of limitless power source, right? Whether we call it a Forbidden Sun or a Mother Flame, Luffy finding the One Piece and sharing it with the world might make his and everyone's dreams literally come true by getting access to this limitless power source. Chapter 2. The Nuclear Allegory of One Piece. So, by now you've probably noticed that this is just a little bit more serious of a video than we normally do, but having lived in Japan for almost 6 years now, I was very much inspired by a recent trip I did with my parents to Hiroshima, and want to talk about what I believe is a chief inspiration for One Piece as a whole. Because I really think that Oda might be creating a big nuclear allegory with One Piece that he's been building up towards in the last couple of years, and that things like the Mother Flame, the Forbidden Sun, and the ancient weapons might actually have some real-world parallels. Now, you probably already know this, but just for context in case you don't, Japan historically has been the country that has by far suffered the most under the consequences of nuclear power. There was, of course, 15 years ago, the big earthquake that led to the meltdown in Fukushima, which is still a massive issue and topic today in Japanese society. There was also a fisher boat that got caught in the nuclear blast of a nuclear test that happened. And of course, there were the 2 nuclear bombs that were thrown on Hiroshima and Nagasaki that ended World War II. And even knowing that, I think it's really hard to express just how present and what a big part of Japanese collective consciousness and just part of Japanese culture these experiences have been. The topic of nuclear energy and nuclear weapons is probably more present in this country than anywhere else on Earth, for, again, the obvious reasons that we just talked about. But for me, actually going to Hiroshima, seeing the nuclear dome there, and going into the museum, that was such a fundamentally traumatizing experience. Apparently the museum, they actually made it a little bit less, shocking and horrendous than it already was, and I still absolutely was in tears, and at some point just needed to get out and get some fresh air, because you just walk through this dark room, and it's just seeing what the nuclear bomb and the blast actually did to the people and how they suffered for generations after under so many different illnesses and stigma from other people around them who didn't know if this was contagious, not even speaking of all the destruction that it caused. It is absolutely traumatizing. And then of course knowing the history of our planet, where we had the Cold War, and even now we're in basically a new nuclear arms race and everything. It's not a fun topic to think about, and I think most of us just kind of pretending that it's not a thing. But sadly, this is the world that we live in. At the same time, of course, nuclear power and nuclear energy is something that's used in most countries, and it's very controversial in many places, including here in Japan, but also in Germany, where I'm from, where we actually got rid of nuclear energy completely, which then in turn obviously led to some issues too, because then we needed to substitute that with coal. So you see, it's a very, very divisive topic. I also just want to say that obviously I'm a foreigner here in Japan, so I'm just sharing my own observations, but I have a lot of Japanese friends, I talk to them about it, and I think I have a good image of how people feel about it. I think the most important takeaway going forward in the video now is that the topic of nukes and nuclear energy is something that has been digested in Japanese popular culture and just in like any form of art over and over, and is just found in so many pieces of, like, you will note so many different anime that kind of make use of like some sort of nuclear allegory. And as you will hopefully now see, I think that Oda has been writing One Piece very much with that in mind. You can make an argument if he's done that from the very first chapter. I personally would think that if it turns out to be such a big part as it now seems it does, I think that Oda will have had that planned out from the beginning. But if you believe that maybe it's something he only, started integrating a little bit later, that's fine too. Either way, I think it's gonna be a massive part of One Piece in general and what its history will be. So, long story short, while thinking about the character of Vegapunk in particular, this just really seems like this undeniable inspiration to me. And again, based on everything I just said, it would just make so much sense for this to be something that Oda would really want to weave into his story, because there's plenty of precedent for nuclear allegory in Japanese media as well. The tragedy that nuclear weapons caused in the nation led to a wave of media that expressed the pain felt by the artists, and that prevailing theme continues in many of Japanese art and works to this day. I mean, look no further than the world's longest running film franchise, Gojira, or Godzilla, right? It started in 1954 and has spawned 38 films, but of course it originated as this very direct metaphor for the atomic bomb, a literal embodiment of nuclear-powered mass destruction. The monster's origin is a mutation caused by hydrogen bomb testing, and its core skin is a direct reference to the keloid scars carried by survivors of the nuclear attacks. Meanwhile, there's the grandfather of modern manga itself, which is Astro Boy, you might have heard about that, whose nuclear allegory is a lot more obvious when you look at his Japanese name, which is the Mighty Atom. This character represents almost the opposite view from Godzilla, a perspective that reclaims nuclear power as a positive benefit to society, basically. Atom represented the push to embrace atomic energy, to use it as a force to improve people's lives instead of only viewing it as a tool for destruction. And from the horrifying portrayal of Hiroshima's bombing in Barefoot Gen to the black features of Akira or Neon Genesis Evangelion, nuclear allegories are all over Japanese media and manga and anime, and One Piece is no exception. And it really seems that elements of Oda's story are bringing in both the positive and the negative aspects of this technology, as you've already seen. For example, take Vegapunk's character and how much he's based on real-world scientists, like we mentioned, like Einstein and J. Robert Oppenheimer. Vegapunk's main moral conflict echoes the very much real-world complex decisions around nuclear energy. And this really makes the fact that Vegapunk's entire appearance is based on Albert Einstein all the more fitting, I think. It goes much deeper than just looking like a stereotypical scientist. But to really understand it and how it connects to One Piece in detail, we need to understand a little bit of history here. Einstein's theory of special relativity and the idea of mass energy equivalence provided the entire basis for discovering nuclear power. You'll of course recognize the very famous equation E equals mc squared, but if you've never learned exactly what it means, it essentially says that mass and energy are just different forms of the same thing. Specifically, within a tiny amount of mass, as small as an atom, there is just an unfathomable amount of energy if you can just directly turn all the mass into energy itself. But if scientists could find a way to tap into that energy, you get practically unlimited power or untold destruction. I'm not a physicist, so this might be wrong, but I very clearly remember this one example from my own physics class in high school where our teacher basically showed us his cup, and he was like, this is a little bit big, but he was like, his coffee cup, and he was like, if we filled this with like a cup of water, we would have insane amounts of energy that could probably power like an entire city for over a year, basically. So you know how much energy is in a little bit of mass. During World War II, Einstein actually co-signed a letter urging the US government to fund nuclear research under the pretense that Germany was close to developing an atomic weapon themselves. However, it was later discovered that Germany was not that close to this capability after all, and after the US used the atomic bomb, Einstein actually regretted his role in initiating the project. And he then spent the rest of his life as an advocate for peace, warning countries around the globe about the dangers of nuclear warfare. Kind of like Vegapunk does with the use of the ancient weapons. There's also a clear inspiration with him to physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer, who of course served as the main director of the Manhattan Project and who directly led the team of scientists who developed the first atomic bomb. Now, Oppenheimer too regretted the ensuing nuclear arms race that occurred after World War II, advocating for international control of atomic energy. Also, Oppenheimer really weirdly spoke Sanskrit and was really into like the ancient Vedas and like the ancient Indian mythology, and that honestly can be seen in One Piece as well, with these ancient myths that actually turned out to be ancient tech. But yeah, Dr. Vegapunk is just inspired by these two, and especially by Einstein, in so many ways beyond just looks. Obviously, he once won a peace prize for his flower bullets. He of course named his cyborg soldiers the Pacifista, because a pacifist is someone who doesn't like war, who's against war, hoping that they would be used to maintain peace. That didn't work out great, and he recreated the Mother Flame because its limitless energy could prevent the need for people across the world to fight over natural resources. But then, he saw the world government use all his inventions for evil. His Pacifista have been used as tools of war to oppress those who would defy the government, which is like doubly ironic because the person that he used for the Pacifista project was a revolutionary who's now used to oppress the people even more, and the Mother Flame powered an ancient weapon and erased an entire country from existence in seconds. And of course, the ways that the first and second One Piece world ended could also be very much symbolic of real-world events related to nuclear energy. I mean, the first world was said to have ended in fire and darkness. This could represent Japan's first tragedy at the hand of nuclear weapons, the destruction and loss of life after the US dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The serpent's hellfire and resulting death can also parallel the effects that these weapons had on the nation, and even the darkness could be an extension of this idea because there's a scientific concept called a nuclear winter that says that if the world ever broke out into large-scale warfare using nuclear weapons, the result would also significantly alter the planet's climate because the amount of dust and debris launched into the air would actually form a long-lasting cloud cover, blotting out the sunlight, plunging the world into darkness, and potentially resulting in the loss of the majority of life on Earth. So if the first world might represent the first time that Japan reckoned with the destructive capabilities of atomic power, the second world ending in a global flood could of course then represent the other major nuclear incident in Japan's history, the Fukushima accident. As we mentioned earlier, in 2011, a powerful earthquake and tsunami damaged a nuclear power plant at Fukushima, leading to a meltdown. Radioactive material leaked into the ocean, and the United Nations labeled it as the worst nuclear incident since Chernobyl. So while the first world ended in darkness, the second ended in a flood. The sea got stormed, right? But that being said, the Mother Flame and the endings of the first and second world are only part of the entire bigger nuclear commentary that Oda is, in my opinion, actually making here, because there are also, of course, the ancient weapons. Chapter 3. The ancient weapons of mass destruction. Pluton, Poseidon, and Uranus are kind of a nuclear allegory of their own. These weapons of mass destruction left over from the Void Century appear to be wreaking havoc once again. And the one whose true destructive capabilities we've probably seen the most of is Uranus, assuming that Uranus is what Imu actually used to destroy the Lucia kingdom, but whatever it is, it was tied to the Mother Flame. When Imu fired this weapon, beams of light rained down on the island, leaving behind nothing. Literally nothing. Not even ocean. It's the single most destructive force that we've ever seen in One Piece. And since it seems that Uranus required the Mother Flame to use it, the nuclear comparisons just get even stronger. Now, if that's the case, then Imu is essentially using a nuclear weapon of mass destruction in the story to nuke islands. Literally. You remember that in his message to the world, Vegapunk was left questioning Joy Boy's actions, right? He couldn't be sure who was actually good and who was evil in the Void Century. Both sides were flawed. Joy Boy, who kind of owned most of the ancient weapons it seems, and the Great Kingdom or the Alliance that would become the world government, all of them had their issues. And one of the biggest reasons that he questions Joy Boy character was because Joy Boy was somehow responsible for the ancient weapons surviving into the current age, hiding them and making sure that they would be used by someone else. Like, literally, according to Vegapunk, he preserved the weapons so they could be used again. We can't speculate, of course, though, that Joy Boy allowed them to remain in order to have a last resort option to fight against Imu and the world government after the victory. It sort of parallels the real-world idea of mutually assured destruction, right? Many powerful countries have built up their nuclear arsenal, but are deterred from ever launching an actual attack against any other because an atomic war would just result in complete annihilation of everyone. Ironically enough, though, this permanent standoff also disincentivizes either side from disarmament, causing the threat of an all-out war to constantly loom over the world. And so it could just be the case that Joy Boy wanted to make sure that his side also had some of these ancient weapons in the hopes that Imu wouldn't ever get to use his. Like, if Imu destroys the world with them, we're gonna destroy the Red Line, and then everyone is gone. Since Pluton has been preserved in Wano, who were historic allies of Joy Boy, and its blueprints were passed down in Water 7, possibly by the Hammer clan who constructed the original Pluton, it's possible that he purposefully left these there to be safeguarded by his allies for the day that they would be needed in the war against the world government. However, in the meantime, we know that the world government, of course, has been trying everything in their power to get their hands on the world's strongest battleship, having its best CP9 agents undercover in Water 7 for literal years trying to get their hands on these blueprints. And if we're being honest, they were actually very close to succeeding too, if it hadn't been for Frankie choosing to just burn them up instead. So really, this whole discussion of the ancient weapons and whether they should or should not exist reminds me a lot of the central themes of the Water 7 arc too, like Frankie's whole backstory centered around the morality of building weapons that can hurt others, when his battle Frankies were then used by Cypherpole to attack a judicial ship, Tom took the blame and Frankie was devastated, regretting ever having built them. However, Tom is also the one who urges Frankie to be proud of his own creations, insisting that a ship has no malice of its own, right? Any evil committed with them is due to the will of the one using it. This was, of course, in the light of Tom then being charged with treason and building the Oro Jackson, Goldie Rogers ship. However, the question is whether this idea of morality can be extended even to something like the ancient weapons themselves. Like, is the use of a weapon of mass destruction ever justified, even when used against an unjust force like the world government? However, there's one ancient weapon that doesn't quite seem to fit the pattern here, of course, right? Poseidon. Instead of being an outright weapon, Poseidon is this ability possessed by the mermaid princess Shirahoshi, which allows her to control the giant sea kings that are these fearsome leviathans that fill One Piece's oceans. But what if I told you that these creatures too can also fit very much into this nuclear allegory in One Piece, because what if the Sea Kings are the result of radioactive mutation? Chapter 4. Environmental and genetic change in One Piece. As I've discussed earlier, the use of the Forbidden Sun in the ancient One Piece world is potentially a metaphor for radioactive energy itself. But I think it's also possible that a global actual fallout could have very much shaped the setting that we now see in the current story. Specifically, a world full of radiation could have just altered both the climate of the planet as well as all the life living on it. Atomic radiation has the power to alter DNA itself, right? Usually to very destructive effects. However, even in the real world, a moderate amount of radiation can kind of help with evolution and is kind of what drives forward mutation, which then obviously drives evolution itself. And in fiction, these genetic mutations are then kind of exaggerated and often used as a source for mutated creatures or the origin of superpowers, of course, right? Think the Incredible Hulk or the Fantastic Four, both of whom gained their powers as a result of being bombarded with radiation, or Spider-Man, right? Radioactive Spider. This also connects right back to the entire Godzilla franchise, in which the monster has historically been created from radiation from American hydrogen bomb testing in the Pacific Ocean. Now, let's tie this into one piece and start again with Shirahoshi here where we last left off, right? Through Shirahoshi's ability to communicate with the Sea Kings and hearing them talk with the voice of all things, we've already seen a lot of evidence that they are very intelligent beings as opposed to like some mindless fish monsters. It's actually possible that the Sea Kings were once something far closer to humans before being transformed into monsters in the destruction of the first or second world, but I don't think that it stops even there. Mutation due to the use of the Mother Flame could even be an explanation for the very different, weird, and unique races that all inhabit the planet. Fishmen, minks, giants, long leg, long arm, all these things. I've always thought it was very strange that these beings are all technically the same species, right? They're all able to mate with one another, no problem, which biologically speaking makes them all the same species. Now, the physical differences could have caused regular people to gain qualities that we see in races like the minks or the fishmen, so it's possible that at the beginning of the One Piece timeline, the world was just populated by regular humans. In fact, I've talked about before that you could make an argument that the first world might have just actually been very Earth-like, like the world that we know today. You might know that I've talked about this idea before in some podcasts and like in some other videos with other people, but I am a really big fan also of The Wheel of Time, which is a fantastic fantasy story. I'm listening to it right now actually as an audiobook again. Basically, throughout this epic fantasy adventure, which seems to be this fantasy setting, we know that the world has broken multiple times as well. And throughout this series, like 13 books, super thick, there are these little hints. It's never a big part of the main story, but there are all these little hints that hint at the fact that this fantasy world that we now see with Trollocs and all these things was actually our real world in the future. Like there are all these hints at our current modern time, and then like humanity got greedy and things escalated, broke the world, and now, magic is a thing, and so on and so forth. So bringing this back to One Piece, the end of the first world saw the world covered by flame and darkness, potentially the result of the Forbidden Sun melting down, or atomic war, and a resulting nuclear winter, and afterwards, normal humans may have mutated in shape and in size, their DNA being fused with sea creatures or animals, leading to various races in the story. Again, something that is very common as a trope in Japanese, storytelling. Again, Godzilla, etc., etc. Alternatively, nuclear radiation could have also affected existing sea creatures or animals, leading them to gain human-like qualities and intelligence. And at the same time, this could even be the cause of one of One Piece's central and most mysterious power systems, devil fruits, right? Vegapunk suggested that devil fruits are the results of the dreams of people who lived in the past, but what was the actual physical process for creating them? For that, we're still very much left in the dark. There could of course be a magical explanation, but as you know, the more One Piece goes on at this point, the more different types of magic seem to just be explained away by advanced ancient technology instead. So were devil fruits also infused with this radioactive power source, leading to individual mutations that created all these abilities? Kind of like the X-Men, I guess. Mutants, right? After all, Vegapunk does note that a devil fruit does alter a person's lineage factor, the One Piece equivalent to DNA. Devil fruits literally cause the user to mutate, which is how he was able to recreate devil fruit effects in the Seraphim by infusing them with his new green blood invention. Green, of course, also kind of being the color used often in comics and stuff to, symbolize radiation. But then there's also the climate side of things, right? One Piece isn't just this post-apocalyptical world, it's this post-apocalyptical world. That was hard to say. The world has ended twice before at least. The weather and climate are completely out of control, making it impossible to navigate by regular means. The sea levels have risen as a result of the ancient weapons being used, a very on-the-nose metaphor also for climate change in the real world, by the way, as the melting of the ice caps leads to real-life sea level rise. Also, summer has been insane. I don't know where you're living. Japan has been crazy. Europe has been crazy. I assume America has been crazy. It's uncomfortable. But let's now look into the future. Chapter 5. A more hopeful future. So, what about then the third world of One Piece, right? How will all of these nuclear allegories actually culminate? Dr. Vegapunk doesn't really seem any closer to abandoning his dream of providing the world with limitless energy. After all, a man's dreams never die. and with now several Stella having survived and with a shiny new body waiting in a box on Elbaf, we've not seen the last, of course, of the world's greatest scientist. So will a post-world government society be responsible enough to use this technology for good this time? Or should it be destroyed to prevent the risk of someone ever using it again for evil? Even a part of Vegapunk himself, York, is currently working with the Gorosei to bring the Mother Flame back online. Representing Vegapunk's greedy side, she's doing so for purely selfish reasons so that she can be, granted a spot living on the top of the world amongst the celestial dragons. And the world government definitely isn't going to use this nuclear reactor for society's benefit, right? Imu wants to use it to power the ancient weapon Uranus and destroy a bunch of stuff. He's already used this weapon of mass destruction once to wipe the Lucia kingdom off the map, but with a limitless power source fully operational in Marijua, he could simply eradicate all his opposition in the Revolutionary Army or anywhere he pleased. Even though Sabo did personally witness its destructive capabilities, the revolution has no counter to a weapon that's so unbelievably powerful and devastating. But someone else who's aiming for Imu's throne might. Blackbeard is about to learn the location of not one, but two ancient weapons from Karibu who's arrived on Hachinosu. I mean, Teach could very well kidnap the Mermaid Princess Shirahoshi, but he might also be able to attack Wano and able to claim the battleship Pluton, something Shanks thought he would do anyways. So if Imu and Blackbeard came face to face, both with control of an ancient weapon, would they actually avoid using them, due to mutually assured destruction? I kind of think that's doubtful at the very least. Both characters have so far shown very little concern for collateral damage, even when those on their own side are put at risk. It's very likely that if no one stops either of them, they'll just break out into an all-out war that won't just harm each other, but will end up enveloping and potentially breaking the entire planet once again. Meaning that one of the few hopes to avoid this then would lie with the main character, obviously, Luffy. It's kind of unlikely that he will circle back to Wano to get Pluton himself, but with Frankie having seen the blueprints and Loki and Elbaf's connection to the Galela, it is possible that they could find and unfreeze the shipwrights who built the first Pluton and just create another meant to counter the original one. That's how these blueprints were created to begin with. Now, would Luffy's faction be able to target the ancient weapons in particular before they're able to do irreparable damage to the rest of the One Piece planet? And if he does, at the end of the series, could he actually enact a sort of nuclear disarmament thing by destroying the opposing ancient weapons and then deconstructing his own Pluton? He could eliminate the ancient weapons from existence altogether, unlike his predecessor, Joy Boy, who irresponsibly, at least according to Vegapunk, let them remain in the world because they may be needed again against Imu. Luffy actually could get rid of all of them alongside all the knowledge of how to ever recreate them, since the remaining blueprints were already burned and Galela could take the method for building them to their grave. At the same time, Vegapunk could build his limitless energy source with no fear of it powering weapons that no longer exist, and ideally, in their place, the people of the world would have no more motivation for warfare altogether because their needs for resources would be finally fully met. There would no longer be a need to rebuild any such weapons. Like the dreams of all the Straw Hats, Vegapunk's own might be another one that will come true by the end of the series. And while we don't know yet what Luffy's true secret dream actually is, if it is something like partying with the entire world, or no one ever going hungry again, or who knows, maybe even destroying every single weapon on the entire planet and everyone's just fist brawling, Vegapunk's technology could help make all that happen. Now that may sound like an overly happy ending maybe even too optimistic for a series that deals with a lot of harsh political realities like One Piece does, but does that sound like the kind of world that Luffy and his limitless optimism and spirit would actually create? Wouldn't it make much more sense for the Sun God to just fulfill his destiny by bringing laughter and smiles to the entire world at the end of the story? One Piece, like so many stories before it, may center around a clear nuclear allegory, a moral decision between progress and tragedy, and like his predecessor Astro Boy before him, Luffy may be able to take something that's caused so much pain and destruction and use it to bring hope to the entire world. Thanks for watching.